The room fell silent as the attorney finished reading the will. I inherited Grandma Margaret's house. After 10 years of Sunday visits, while my sister Ashley never bothered, I wasn't surprised, but the tension in the room was suffocating. Before I could process what happened, my father stood up, his face flushed with anger. "Trocky, you need to sign the house over to your sister. She needs it more than you do. This is about family." My mother nodded in agreement while Ashley looked at me expectantly, already planning her renovation. I smiled and pulled out the sealed envelope Grandma had given me days before she passed away. "Actually, Grandma left me something else too," I said, my hands trembling slightly as I broke the seal. I grew up in Pinewood, a quiet suburb where most families knew each other for generations. My sister Ashley was 3 years older and had always been my parents' golden child. She was beautiful, outgoing, and charming when she wanted to be. I was the practical one, the responsible one, the one who never caused trouble. In our family dynamic that somehow translated to being the less interesting child. When my grandfather passed away 10 years ago, Grandma Margaret was suddenly alone in the 2-story colonial house they had shared for over 40 years. My parents suggested we should take turns visiting her, create a schedule so she wouldn't be lonely. Somehow those scheduled visits became my responsibility exclusively. "Your sister's busy with her social life, Tracky," my mother would say. "You know how important networking is in this day and age. You've always been the homebody anyway." At first, the Sunday visits felt like an obligation. I would drive the 20 minutes to Grandma's house, sit through lunch, listen to her stories about the good old days, and count the minutes until I could politely leave. I was 23, then focused on finishing my accounting degree, and spending Sundays with my grandmother wasn't exactly my idea of fun. But something changed around the 3rd month of our Sunday tradition. Grandma had prepared lunch as usual, but instead of reminiscing about the past, she asked about my classes, my career goals, my dreams. "Your grandfather and I always believed education was the best investment," she told me, serving her famous pot roast. "We saved every penny so your father could go to college, but he dropped out after 2 years. Said it wasn't for him." I nearly choked on my water. Dad dropped out. He always told us he graduated. Grandma smiled knowingly. "There are many family stories your parents might have adjusted slightly. But that doesn't matter now. Tell me more about these accounting classes you're taking." After that day, our visits transformed. Grandma became my confidant, my cheerleader, and sometimes my only supporter. When I struggled with advanced taxation principles, she sat patiently while I explained concepts to her, claiming that teaching someone else was the best way to learn. When I doubted my career choice, she reminded me that financial independence was the foundation of a woman's freedom. "Never depend on anyone else to secure your future, Trossie," she would say, her blue eyes intense, despite her advancing age. "Not your parents, not a husband, not even your sister. Make your own way." As the years passed, I started doing more than just visiting. I drove Grandma to doctor appointments, helped her organize her medications, and assisted with household tasks she could no longer manage easily. We developed a comfortable routine. Sunday mornings were for church, followed by lunch preparation together, afternoons for conversation, and evenings for watching her favorite classic movies before I headed home. My parents rarely asked about these visits, and Ashley never showed interest. "How's the old lady doing?" she might ask occasionally, but never with genuine concern. One Sunday, while looking for a particular baking dish Grandma wanted to use, I discovered a stack of leather-bound journals in her kitchen cabinet. When I asked about them, Grandma hesitated before responding. "Those are my visitation journals," she admitted. "I've kept track of everyone who visits, what we talk about, and how long they stay. Started doing it when your grandfather got sick. The hospice counselor suggested it might help me process grief when the time came." My heart broke a little when I realized what those journals represented: a meticulous record of who cared enough to show up. I pulled one out, opened it to a random page, and saw my name date, arrival time, departure time, and notes about what we had discussed. Flipping through more pages, I saw my name repeatedly, with only occasional mentions of my parents, usually on holidays. Ashley's name appeared exactly twice in the journal from the previous year, both times, for less than 30 minutes. You've documented everything, I whispered. Grandma nodded, taking the journal from my hands and placing it back in the cabinet. People show you who they are through their actions, Trossie. I've learned it's important to notice patterns, not promises. That was the moment I realized Grandma wasn't just a sweet old lady living in the past. She was observant, methodical, and completely aware of the family dynamics around her. It changed how I saw our Sundays together. These weren't just visits out of obligation. They were becoming the foundation of the most honest relationship I had with any family member. My relationship with my family had always been complicated, but as my connection with Grandma grew stronger, the disparities in how my parents treated Ashley and me became impossible to ignore. My parents had always justified their differential treatment with the same excuses. Ashley is more sensitive. Ashley needs more guidance. Ashley has bigger dreams. What they never acknowledged was that sensitive meant prone to temper tantrums, well into adulthood guidance, meant financial bailouts, and bigger dreams translated to unrealistic career aspirations that changed monthly. By the time I completed my accounting degree and secured my first professional position at a respected local firm, Ashley had cycled through 5 different jobs. She had been a real estate agent for 3 months before deciding the hours were too demanding. She tried interior design until she realized it required more technical knowledge than watching HGTV. She worked at a boutique until she had a disagreement with her manager about attendance policies. Each failure was met with understanding and support from our parents. Not everyone finds their path right away, my mother would say while writing another check to cover Ashley's rent. Some people need time to discover their true calling. When I purchased my modest 1-bedroom apartment after 2 years of saving, my father's response was tepid at best. Are you sure buying is smart right now? The market seems unstable. Yet when Ashley announced she wanted to move to a more expensive apartment because her current neighborhood wasn't inspiring enough, they helped with her security deposit. I tried multiple times to involve Ashley in Grandma's care. She asks about you, I told her once, which wasn't entirely true, but I hoped it might spark some interest. That's sweet, Ashley replied, scrolling through her phone. But Sundays are my reset days. Can't you just tell her I said hi? For Grandma's 85th birthday, I organized a small family celebration at her house. My parents came bearing gifts and platitudes. Ashley promised she would be there. I'll even bake a cake, she declared. Grandma loves my baking. I couldn't remember the last time Ashley had baked anything, but I welcomed her enthusiasm. The day of the celebration, my parents arrived, but Ashley didn't. 2 hours into the party, she texted that she couldn't make it because she had a migraine. Later that evening, she posted photos of herself at a brewery with friends. Grandma never mentioned the absence, but I noticed her writing in her journal that night before bed. One evening, about 7 months ago, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off some tax documents they needed signed. I heard them in the kitchen talking in hushed tones. I wouldn't normally eavesdrop, but I heard my sister's name followed by financial trouble again. We can't keep doing this, my father said, sounding exhausted. We've already given her almost $15,000 this year. My mother's response made my blood run cold. What choice do we have? She's not like Tracy. She needs our support. Besides, we can always use some of Mom's money when the time comes. You know she's got that house free and clear plus whatever she saved. We can't count on that, my father replied. Mom's been acting strange lately, asking all those questions about who visits and who doesn't. What if she decides to leave everything to Trocky? She wouldn't do that to her own son, my mother insisted. Besides, I always tell her how often Ashley visits when Tracy isn't there. She believes me. I stood frozen in the hallway, my mind racing. They were counting on Grandma's money to continue supporting Ashley's irresponsible lifestyle. Worse, they were lying to Grandma about Ashley's visits. That night, I couldn't sleep. The conversation replayed in my mind along with years of memories showing the pattern of favoritism and enabling. I wondered if I should tell Grandma the truth, but I couldn't bring myself to hurt her, with the knowledge that her son and daughter-in-law were essentially waiting for her inheritance while lying about their care and concern. Instead, I doubled down on making our Sundays together meaningful. If these were the last years, months, or even days of Grandma's life. I wanted them filled with genuine connection, not family politics and false pretenses. The first sign that Grandma's health was declining came shortly after her 86th birthday. I arrived for our usual Sunday visit and found her still in her nightgown, confused about what day it was. The kitchen, normally spotless and ready for our cooking session, was untouched. A prescription bottle lay open on the counter, pills scattered across the surface. "I think I already took my medicine," she said, her voice unusually frail. "Or maybe I didn't. I can't seem to remember this morning very well." That afternoon, instead of our usual activities, I drove her to the urgent care clinic, where they discovered her blood pressure was dangerously high. The doctor adjusted her medications and spoke to me privately about concerns regarding her living alone. "At her age, small changes in health can accelerate quickly," he explained. "Does she have family who can check on her more regularly?" I explained our Sunday arrangement and promised to increase my visits. That week I began stopping by every evening after work. I installed a pill organizer with alarms, programmed her coffee maker to work automatically each morning, and stocked her refrigerator with easy-to-prepare meals. I called my parents to explain the situation, hoping they might offer to help. "We trust you're handling it," my mother said. "Your sister is going through a difficult time right now. She's considering starting her own business, and we're helping her develop a business plan." This business plan appeared to be Ashley's 7th career pivot in as many years. This time, she wanted to become a social media influencer, focusing on luxury lifestyle content, despite having neither the following nor the luxury lifestyle to support such a venture. As Grandma's condition worsened, I requested flexible hours at work. My supervisor, understanding the situation, allowed me to work remotely 2 days a week so I could spend more time at Grandma's house. Those days became precious as I watched her gradually withdraw from activities she once enjoyed. One particularly difficult Thursday, after helping Grandma shower and change a new level of care she now required, we sat together in her sunroom. The autumn light filtered through yellow leaves, casting the room in a golden glow. "You shouldn't have to do all this," she said suddenly, her voice clearer than it had been in days. "I don't mind," I assured her, adjusting the blanket around her legs. "I know you don't. That's part of why I love you so much." She reached for my hand, her skin paper-thin over blue veins. "I want to tell you something important, Tracy. I know exactly who cares for me and who doesn't." My throat tightened. "Grandma, no, let me finish. I may be old, and my body might be failing, but my mind is still sharp enough. I know your sister never visits. I know your parents come only when they want something. And I know you've rearranged your entire life to care for me." Tears sprang to my eyes. I had tried so hard to protect her from these painful truths. "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" She continued, a spark of her old fire returning. "I've been keeping those journals for a reason. Not because I'm senile or forgetful, but because I wanted an accurate record of who showed up when it wasn't convenient or profitable." The following Sunday, Grandma asked me to help her organize her personal papers. She directed me to a specific drawer in her bedroom dresser, where I found a file folder containing her will insurance policies and property deed. "I want you to know where everything is," she explained. "And I want you to take me to see Walter Thompson next week." Walter Thompson was her attorney, a man in his 70s who had handled my grandparents' legal affairs for decades. "Is something wrong with your will?" I asked, concerned that my parents might have spoken to her. Grandma smiled mysteriously. "Nothing's wrong with it. I just want to make sure everything is exactly as it should be." The next family dinner at my parents' house was tense. Ashley announced she had quit her latest job at a marketing firm because her boss failed to recognize her creative vision. My parents, as usual, expressed support and understanding. "Sometimes you have to step away from toxic environments," my father said, serving Ashley an extra portion of steak. "Exactly," Ashley agreed. "Plus, I'm exploring several opportunities right now. Very promising ones." When the conversation turned to Grandma, Ashley's disinterest became blatant. "How is she, anyway?" she asked, as if inquiring about a distant acquaintance. "She needs more help every day," I replied. "It would be nice if other family members could visit occasionally." Ashley rolled her eyes. "We all have different relationships with her, Tracy. Just because I don't play nurse doesn't mean I don't care." Playing nurse, I repeated, incredulous. You know what I mean, she continued, waving dismissively. All that hands-on stuff with medications and appointments. That's not my thing. It doesn't mean I love her less. It's exactly what it means, I snapped before I could stop myself. Love is showing up. Love is doing the hard things when they need to be done. Girls, my mother interjected sharply. This isn't productive. Besides, Ashley added, it's not like it's my responsibility. Grandma has enough money for in-home care if she needed it. She's just too stubborn to spend it. I left dinner early that night, sickened by the callous attitude toward the woman who had helped raise them, who had contributed to family finances when needed, who had never asked for anything in return except time and attention. The following week, I took Grandma to see Walter Thompson as she had requested. She asked me to wait in the reception area, insisting she needed to speak with him privately. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours, and when she emerged, she looked both exhausted and satisfied. Everything is taken care of now, she told me on the drive home. I can rest easier. A few days later, while helping Grandma sort through old photographs, she revealed something unexpected. I've been meeting with Walter every few months for the past 2 years, she confided, ever since I noticed the pattern in my journals. What pattern, I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. The pattern of who loves me with actions, not just words. She handed me a black and white photograph of herself, as a young woman standing proudly in front of the house I had come to know so well. This house represents everything your grandfather and I worked for. 50 years of mortgage payments, repairs, improvements. We didn't have much, but we built something that would last. I studied the image of my grandmother, barely recognizable in her youth, but with the same determined expression I'd come to know. A house is more than walls and a roof, Tracky, she continued. It's a physical manifestation of values, hard work, responsibility, care, legacy. She tapped the photograph firmly. I've updated my will to reflect who upholds those values in this family. I tried to redirect the conversation, uncomfortable with the implication. Let's not talk about wills and inheritance, Grandma. You're still here, and that's what matters. She shook her head stubbornly. No, this needs to be said. When the time comes, there will be noise and drama from certain people. I want you to know that whatever happens, whatever is said, I made my choices with complete clarity of mind and purpose. Looking back now, I realized she was preparing me for what was to come. She knew her time was short, and she knew exactly how my family would react. Grandma Margaret passed away peacefully on a Tuesday morning in early spring. I had spent the night in her spare bedroom, as I had been doing 3 nights a week for the past month. The hospice nurse had warned me the end was near, but nothing could have prepared me for the hollow feeling of holding her hand as she took her final breath. I called my parents first, then the hospice service. My father and mother arrived 2 hours later, my mother already on her phone making funeral arrangements. Ashley didn't come until the next day, her eyes red but dry. I can't believe she's gone, she said, looking around the house with new interest. This place holds so many memories. I bit my tongue, knowing that whatever memories she claimed were likely fabricated or borrowed from stories she'd heard rather than experiences she'd shared. The funeral was well attended. Grandma had been active in her church and community for decades, and many people came to pay their respects. My parents stood at the front accepting condolences, as the chief mourners playing the role of devoted son and daughter-in-law. Ashley wore a tasteful black dress and dabbed at her eyes at appropriate moments. I stood slightly apart, my grief too raw and real for the performance aspects of the occasion. Several of Grandma's friends approached me, specifically ignoring the reception line my parents had established. Margaret talked about you constantly, said Eleanor, Grandma's friend from church. Those Sunday visits meant everything to her. At the reception following the service, I overheard Ashley talking to a distant cousin. The house needs work, but the location is prime, she said, her voice animated for the first time that day. I'm thinking of knocking out a wall between the kitchen and dining room, opening up the floor plan. Very modern. You're keeping the house? The cousin asked. Well, nothing's official yet, but it makes sense. I'm the only one who needs the space right now. Trotzy already has her apartment. I walked away, my hands shaking with anger and grief. Not even a full day after burying our grandmother, she was already planning renovations for a house she had barely visited and had no right to claim. That evening, as I was gathering my things to leave Grandma's house, which still felt like hers, not mine or anyone else's, I discovered a sealed envelope on my grandfather's old desk. My name was written on it in Grandma's distinctive handwriting, along with instructions to be opened at the reading of my will. I placed the envelope in my purse, both curious and apprehensive about its contents. The official reading of the will was scheduled for the following Monday at Walter Thompson's office. My parents arrived early, dressed formally, as if attending a business meeting. Ashley came separately, wearing an outfit that seemed chosen to project responsible adulthood, quite different from her usual casual style. Walter Thompson greeted us solemnly and invited us into a conference room. He was old school in his approach, preferring a formal reading rather than simply distributing copies of the document. "Before I begin," he said, adjusting his reading glasses, "I want to express my personal condolences. Margaret was more than a client to me. She was a friend of many decades." He opened a folder and began reading. The first portions were standard arrangements for funeral expenses, specific bequests of jewelry and personal items to various friends and family members. Ashley received Grandma's collection of vintage costume jewelry. My mother received a set of china that had belonged to Grandma's mother. When Walter reached the section about the house and remaining assets, the atmosphere in the room changed perceptibly. "To my granddaughter, Tracy Lynn Wilson, I leave my house at 1842 Maple Street, free and clear of any encumbrances, along with all its contents not otherwise specifically bequeathed. Additionally, I leave to Tracy the sum of $75,000, representing the balance of my savings and investments." The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at Walter, certain I had misheard. The house, to me, and savings I hadn't known existed. Ashley was the first to break the silence. "This has to be a mistake." Walter shook his head. "There is no mistake. Margaret was very clear about her wishes. She updated her will approximately 18 months ago and confirmed her decisions with me several times since then." My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This doesn't make any sense. Tracy already has a place to live. Ashley is the one who needs stability right now." "Margaret's instructions were explicit," Walter replied calmly. "The distribution reflects her wishes." My father stood up abruptly, turning to face me. "Tracy, you need to sign the house over to your sister. She needs it more than you do. This is about family." My mother nodded in agreement, while Ashley looked at me expectantly. The sense of entitlement in their expressions was breathtaking. They genuinely believed I should simply hand over a house worth hundreds of thousands of dollars because they deemed Ashley more deserving. I remembered the envelope in my purse. "Actually, Grandma left me something else, too," I said, my hands trembling slightly as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter folded neatly with another smaller sealed envelope attached. "Would you like me to leave you to review this privately?" Walter asked. "No," I replied suddenly. Certain that whatever Grandma had written needed to be witnessed, "Please stay." The atmosphere in Walter Thompson's office after the will reading was toxic. I tucked Grandma's unopened letter back into my purse, needing time to process everything privately before sharing its contents. "I can't believe you would do this to your own sister," my father said, as we left the attorney's office, his voice low but intense. "After everything we've done for you." "I haven't done anything," I replied, struggling to keep my composure. "This was Grandma's decision, not mine. You influenced her," my mother accused, not bothering to lower her voice in the parking lot. "All those visits playing the devoted granddaughter while poisoning her against the rest of us." Ashley remained unusually quiet, but the look she gave me communicated volumes of resentment and betrayal. That evening the calls began. First my father, then my mother, then both together on speakerphone, outlining all the reasons I should sign over the house to Ashley. "She's between jobs right now. She needs the stability. You've always been the financially responsible one. This could be her fresh start." It's what Grandma would have wanted if she'd really understood everyone's situation. I listened to their arguments, each one making me more certain that Grandma had understood the family dynamics perfectly. I need time to think was all I would commit to, which only intensified their campaign. The next day, my mother arrived at my apartment, unannounced, armed with real estate listings. "Look at these lovely condos," she said, spreading papers across my kitchen table. "Any of these would be a significant upgrade from your current place, and you could buy one outright with the money Grandma left you. Everyone wins." "I already have a home," I reminded her. "And now I have Grandma's house, too. I haven't decided what to do with either yet." My mother's pleasant facade cracked. "Don't be selfish, Trutzy. This family has always supported each other. Your sister needs this opportunity, the same way she needed the car you bought her when she turned 16 while I worked at the grocery store to save for mine. I asked years of resentment bubbling to the surface. Or the way she needed you to pay for her apartment when she quit her third job, without having another one lined up." "That's different," my mother snapped. "Ashley has always needed more support. You've always been self-sufficient, and that's being held against me now." She gathered her real estate listings with shaking hands. "I never thought you'd be this callous. Your own sister." After she left, I sat in my apartment feeling shell-shocked. In their worldview, I was the villain for not immediately relinquishing an inheritance to a sister who had never shown the slightest interest in Grandma or her house. The next phase of their campaign involved extended family. My aunt called to express her concern about the family rift. A cousin texted suggesting I was being unfair to Ashley. Even my mother's brother, who lived in another state and had visited maybe twice in the past decade, emailed to remind me about family unity and honoring elders' true intentions. It became clear that my parents were presenting a very specific narrative to anyone who would listen. Poor Ashley was being deprived of her rightful inheritance by selfish Trocky who had somehow manipulated Grandma into changing her will. Ashley finally confronted me directly, a week after the will reading. She appeared at my workplace during lunch hour, causing a scene in the reception area, until I agreed to speak with her. "You've always been jealous of me," she declared once we were seated at a cafe across the street. "This is your way of finally one-upping me." "This isn't a competition, Ashley." "Then why won't you sign over the house?" "You don't need it. You've got your perfect little career and your perfect little apartment. I'm trying to get my life together, and you're standing in my way. Have you considered that Grandma left me the house because I was there for her? That it might be a reflection of our relationship, not some random decision or manipulation?" Ashley's expression hardened. "If you don't sign the house over to me, I'm done with you. You'll no longer have a sister. Is that what you want?" The threat hung between us, heavy and final. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Was losing this relationship really a loss? But another part ached at what our family had become. I need to think I repeated the phrase, becoming my mantra. "Don't think too long," Ashley warned as she left. "Some damage can't be undone." The pressure campaign escalated the following Sunday when my parents insisted I join them for dinner. I arrived to find not just my immediate family but also 2 aunts, an uncle and several cousins. It was an ambush, disguised as a family gathering. "We're all concerned," my father announced once dinner was served. "This inheritance situation is tearing our family apart." One by one, family members expressed their worry about my reluctance to do the right thing. The message was clear: I was selfish, ungrateful, and destroying the family by failing to give Ashley what everyone had decided she deserved. "Has anyone asked what I might want to do with the house?" I finally interrupted. "Or why Grandma might have left it specifically to me? Has anyone considered that maybe, just maybe, she had reasons for her decisions?" "We know you spent more time with her," my uncle conceded, "but that doesn't change the family's needs now. Ashley needs this fresh start." I looked around the table at these people who claimed to care about family, while showing so little respect for Grandma's explicit wishes. "I need to go," I said, standing abruptly. "This isn't a discussion. It's a tribunal." As I left, Ashley called after me, "You're choosing a dead woman's wishes over your living family." The words hit me like a physical blow. In their minds, Grandma's death had rendered her preferences irrelevant. Only the desires of the living, specifically Ashley's desires, mattered now. The isolation grew more profound in the following days. Friends who had known my family for years began treating me differently clearly, having heard my parents' version of events. Coworkers noticed my distraction and emotional distance. I stopped attending church, unable to face the community that had known Grandma, and was now hearing twisted versions of what was happening with her estate. One evening, scrolling through social media, I discovered Ashley had shared a post obliquely referencing family betrayal in true colors, showing after a loved one's death. The comments were filled with sympathetic responses, including several from mutual acquaintances, offering support for her difficult family situation. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, doubting myself for the first time. Was I being unreasonable? Was I clinging to Grandma's house out of some petty desire to finally have something Ashley couldn't take or be given? Should I just sign over the house, secure family peace, and move on with my life? The weight of family expectations and manipulation had done its work. I was on the verge of giving in, not because I believed it was right, but because the pressure had become almost unbearable. 2 weeks after the will reading, I drove to Grandma's house, my house now, though it didn't feel that way yet. I hadn't been back since gathering some personal items the day after the funeral, partly avoiding the emotions the place evoked, partly avoiding potential confrontations with my family. The house stood quiet and dignified, just as it always had. The spring flowers Grandma had planted decades ago were beginning to bloom in neat beds along the walkway. I used the key I'd had for years and stepped inside, hit immediately by the familiar scent of lemon furniture polish and the faint, lingering trace of Grandma's perfume. Everything remained exactly as she had left it. The cushion on her favorite armchair still bore the slight indentation where she'd spent her final weeks. Books she'd been reading sat stacked on the side table. Her knitting basket contained an unfinished scarf she'd been making for the church charity drive. I moved through the rooms, slowly running my fingers over familiar surfaces, remembering Sunday afternoons, holiday gatherings, and the countless small moments that had built our relationship. This house wasn't just real estate. It was the physical embodiment of Grandma's life values and legacy. I found myself in her bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed where she had taken her last breath. On the bedside table sat the journal she had been keeping until she became too weak to write. I picked it up, hesitating only briefly, before opening it to the final entries. The last dated entry was from just 3 weeks before her death. Trotzy came by again today, brought daffodils from the market because she knows they're my favorite, helped me bathe and wash my hair, read to me when my eyes were too tired to focus on the page. No one has called to check on me, except Walter confirming the final details are in place. I am at peace with my decisions. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched the journal. Even in her final weeks, Grandma had been fully aware of who showed up and who didn't. Her decisions hadn't been the result of manipulation or confusion, but of clear-eyed observation of her family's true nature. I reached into my purse and withdrew the sealed letter I had shown but not opened at the will reading. Now alone in the house that represented so much, it was time to hear Grandma's final words. The envelope contained several pages written in Grandma's distinctive handwriting, slightly shakier than it once had been, but still clear and determined. Attached was a smaller, sealed envelope marked Additional Documentation. I began reading. My dearest Tracy, if you're reading this, then Walter has executed my will as instructed, and you now know that I've left you my home and the majority of my financial assets. I imagine this has caused quite a stir in the family, and for that I am sorry. Not sorry for my decision, which was made with absolute clarity and conviction, but sorry for the difficulty it may cause you. I want to explain why I've made these choices. Not because I owe anyone an explanation. At 86 years old, I've earned the right to dispose of my property as I see fit, but because I want you to understand and be at peace with accepting what I've given you. For over 50 years, this house has been the center of my life with your grandfather. We purchased it when it was little more than a rundown cottage and, slowly through years of hard work and careful saving, transformed it into a home. Every floorboard, every doorknob, every window represents sacrifices we made and challenges we overcame together. A house is not merely a financial asset or a place to store your belongings. It is a physical manifestation of values, responsibility, care, commitment, and legacy. When I began keeping my visitation journals 10 years ago, I had no specific inheritance plan in mind. I simply wanted to document my final years and the people who shared them with me. What emerged from those pages was a clear pattern. Your parents visited on major holidays, and occasionally when they wanted something. Your sister appeared rarely, usually staying less than an hour, and spending most of that time on her phone. But you, Trossie, you came every single Sunday without fail. When I became ill, you rearranged your entire life to care for me. Some might argue that you were simply doing your duty. That family obligation brought you to my door each week. But obligation doesn't explain the genuine interest you took in my stories, the way you remembered details from conversations weeks earlier, the small, thoughtful gestures that made me feel valued rather than merely attended to. I'm not naive, Tracky. I know your parents have enabled your sister's irresponsibility for years. I know they've discussed my assets as if they were already theirs to distribute. I've overheard phone conversations, noticed missing items after their visits, seen the calculating looks when health issues arose. The smaller envelope attached contains copies of the visitation logs I've kept for the past decade. Every visit, its duration, and its purpose are documented. I've also included a record of the times your parents have asked for financial assistance, as well as the times your father has borrowed items from the house without returning them. Walter has the originals of these documents should they ever be needed. But I don't want you to focus on the negative aspects of our family. Instead, remember this. I am leaving you my home because you have already demonstrated that you understand its true value. You recognize that worth isn't measured solely in dollars, but in the care, attention, and respect we give to the people and things that matter. Your sister's receiving a separate bequest that you'll learn about soon. I've arranged for a trust fund of $25,000 to be established in her name with Walter as trustee. She can access these funds under specific conditions, maintaining steady employment for 6 months, completing a financial management course, and demonstrating responsible planning. I hope this will provide incentive for growth rather than enabling continued dependence. Stand firm, Tracy. You have earned this inheritance not through manipulation or favoritism, but through years of genuine love and support. Do not let guilt or family pressure sway you from accepting what is rightfully yours. The house is now your home to keep or sell as you see fit. My only wish is that whatever you decide brings you joy and continues the legacy of hard work and responsibility that your grandfather and I tried to establish. With all my love and confidence in you, Grandma Margaret, I sat motionless on the bed, the letter clutched in my trembling hands, tears flowing freely. The smaller envelope contained exactly what Grandma had described: photocopies of journal entries, meticulously documenting 10 years of family interactions, financial requests, and patterns of behavior. The evidence was irrefutable. Not only had Grandma been fully aware of the family dynamics, but she had also anticipated the pressure that would be placed on me to relinquish my inheritance. In that moment, sitting in what was now my house, surrounded by the tangible reminders of Grandma's life and values, something shifted within me. The doubt and guilt that had been building under my family's relentless pressure dissipated, replaced by a clarity and resolve that felt like Grandma's final gift. I knew what I needed to do. It was time to stand firm just as Grandma had instructed, not out of spite or revenge, but out of respect for her wishes and the values she had lived by. I carefully folded the letter and supporting documents, returned them to the envelope, and placed it in the drawer of Grandma's nightstand. Then I pulled out my phone and sent a text message to my parents and Ashley. Family meeting at Grandma's house Sunday at 2:00. Important information to share. Please be there. No longer would I allow myself to be manipulated or made to feel guilty for honoring Grandma's explicit wishes. It was time for the truth to come out, no matter how uncomfortable that might be for everyone involved. Sunday arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt since before Grandma's death. I spent the morning at her house, my house now. I reminded myself preparing for the family meeting. I made coffee, arranged chairs in the living room, and placed Grandma's letter and documentation on the coffee table. My parents arrived precisely at two expressions, guarded but expectant. Perhaps they thought I had finally succumbed to their pressure. Ashley arrived 15 minutes late, making an entrance as always. "Thank you for coming," I began once everyone was seated. "I've made a decision about the house." My mother leaned forward eagerly. "We knew you'd do the right thing, sweetheart." "The right thing," I repeated, meeting her gaze steadily. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. I've decided to honor Grandma's explicit wishes. I'll be keeping the house." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly from anticipation to shock. "You can't be serious," my father sputtered. "After everything we've discussed." "I'm very serious," I interrupted, my voice calmer than I felt. "But before you say anything else, I want to read something to you." I picked up Grandma's letter and read it aloud, every word omitting nothing. As I read, my father's face reddened, my mother's lips pressed into a thin line, and Ashley stared at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. When I finished reading the letter, I opened the smaller envelope and spread out the documented visits, financial requests, and borrowed items that Grandma had meticulously tracked. As you can see, Grandma was fully aware of everyone's behavior and made her decisions accordingly. She wasn't confused or manipulated. She was observant and intentional. "Those journals don't prove anything," my father dismissed, though his voice lacked conviction. Mom was getting paranoid toward the end. "Walter Thompson has the originals," I reminded him. "He's prepared to testify to her mental competence if necessary." The implied threat of legal action hung in the air. We all knew a court battle would only expose more uncomfortable truths and drain resources. "There's one more thing you should know," I continued. "Ashley, Grandma didn't leave you out completely." Ashley's head snapped up, sudden hope flickering across her face. "She established a trust fund for you, with $25,000. Walter is the trustee. You can access the money when you maintain steady employment for 6 months, complete a financial management course, and demonstrate responsible planning." $25,000, Ashley scoffed. "The house is worth at least $300,000. "It's not about the money," I said, echoing Grandma's words. "It's about values, responsibility, legacy." "This is unacceptable," my mother declared, standing abruptly. "You've turned our mother against us," she accused my father, finding a new target for blame. "And now your daughter is using it against her own sister." "I haven't turned anyone against anyone," I said firmly. "I've simply decided to respect Grandma's wishes. The house stays with me." Ashley has an opportunity to receive her inheritance by demonstrating the values Grandma tried to instill in all of us. And if we contest the will, my father challenged, then Walter releases the complete documentation, including records of financial requests, borrowed items that were never returned, and the systematic pattern of neglect toward Grandma in her final years. "Is that really the legacy you want to make public?" The threat wasn't explicit, but it was clear. A legal challenge would expose too much cost, too much, and ultimately fail given Grandma's thorough preparation. "I never want to see you again," Ashley spat, grabbing her purse and storming toward the door. "You've always been jealous of me, and now you've found a way to feel superior." "That's not true, and deep down you know it," I replied, maintaining my composure. "The trust fund is a gift, Ashley. An opportunity to break the cycle of dependence. I hope you'll see that someday." My parents followed Ashley, my mother declaring that I was no longer welcome in their home. My father paused at the door, conflict evident on his face before hardening his resolve and following his wife and favored daughter. As the door closed behind them, I expected to feel devastation, or at least profound sadness. Instead, I felt an unexpected lightness. The truth was finally out in the open. No more pretense, no more enabling, no more guilt. The following months were quiet. My parents maintained their position that I had betrayed the family, though the threatened complete estrangement never quite materialized. Occasional text messages kept minimal connections alive. Ashley blocked my number and social media accounts, committing fully to her role as the wronged party. I focused on making the house truly mine, while honoring Grandma's memory. I kept her garden thriving, tending to the perennials she had planted decades ago. I updated the kitchen with modern appliances but preserved the handmade cabinets my grandfather had crafted. I converted the spare bedroom into a home office, but kept Grandma's sewing room intact, donating her materials to the church group she had worked with. 6 months after our confrontation, I received a surprising email from Ashley. The subject line read simply, "Trust Fund Requirements." I've been working at Westfield Marketing for 4 months now. My supervisor says I'm doing well. I've enrolled in the financial management course Walter recommended. I'm not doing this to make peace with you, but I thought you should know. I responded with simple encouragement. Careful not to sound patronizing. That's great news, Ashley. I'm genuinely happy for you. 2 weeks later, my father called. The conversation was awkward, stilted, but it was a start. Your mother and I have been talking, he said. We may have reacted strongly to the situation. Yes, you did. I agreed, not making it easier for him. Ashley seems to be doing better with this job. More focused. The trust fund conditions might have been helpful. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. Sometimes that's where healing begins. By the 1-year anniversary of Grandma's death, tentative family connections had been re-established. My parents came for dinner at the house, commenting awkwardly but positively on the changes I'd made. Ashley and I met for coffee, occasionally our conversations carefully avoiding certain topics, but gradually becoming less tense. Most surprisingly, Ashley completed the requirements for her trust fund, but didn't immediately access the money. I'm thinking about using it as a down payment for a small condo, she told me during one of our coffee meetings. Walter helped me create a budget and savings plan. I used a portion of the money Grandma had left me to establish a scholarship in her name at the local community college, specifically for older students returning to education. Margaret Wilson believed it's never too late to invest in yourself, the scholarship description read. The first recipient was a 58-year-old woman pursuing a nursing degree after raising 4 children. On a bright Sunday afternoon in May, almost 18 months after Grandma's death, I sat in her garden, my garden now, watching bees dance among the flowers she had planted. The house behind me stood solid and welcoming, a testament to decades of care and commitment. I felt Grandma's presence not as a ghost or supernatural visitation, but as the living embodiment of values that had shaped the space and now shaped my life. I understood then what Grandma had really left me. Not just a house or money, but the courage to stand firm in my convictions, to recognize genuine care versus entitlement, and to create boundaries that fostered growth rather than enabling dependence. In her final gift, Grandma had forced our family to confront uncomfortable truths. The process had been painful but ultimately necessary. My parents were slowly recognizing their role in creating family dynamics that valued taking over earning appearance over substance. Ashley was taking steps toward genuine independence, rather than the illusion of adulthood without responsibility. And I had found my voice free from the guilt and manipulation that had characterized so much of our family history. Sometimes the most loving legacy isn't giving people what they want, but what they need. Sometimes the truest compassion isn't enabling destructive patterns, but establishing consequences that create opportunities for growth. Grandma understood this fundamental truth, and through her careful planning, she had given our family a chance to heal, not by avoiding difficult truths, but by finally facing them. As the sun warmed my face in the garden that Sunday, I silently thanked Grandma for her final, most valuable gift. The understanding that real love sometimes means standing firm, even when it would be easier to give in. Have you ever had to stand firm against family pressure when you knew you were doing the right thing? I'd love to hear your stories and how you handled similar situations. Please share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found value in my story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences. And share it with someone who might be struggling with family dynamics or inheritance issues. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and clarity in your own family relationships.